Have you ever saved all year for that one family vacation and ended up stressed out about every single dollar?
Not anymore. Hi, I'm Mary Ellen.
And I'm Joe. We're two busy moms who have cracked the code on travel with points and miles.
We're here to show you how we turn everyday expenses into extraordinary vacations.
This is Wonderland on Points, where we share tips and tricks to help you earn free and deeply discounted travel.
Let the adventure begin. Welcome to Wonderland on Points, presented by Yahoo Travel. We are glad you are joining us because today is an episode that might blow your mind a little bit. We have the story of a family from Wisconsin who knew nothing about points and miles more than about 5 years ago, and they were able to accumulate enough points and miles to go on a 6-month family adventure across countries in Asia, South America. This is truly spectacular. So we have our friend joining us. You can find her on Instagram. This is Kate from Woodfords_worldwide. Kate, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Mary Ellen and Joe. I'm really excited to be here today and share a little bit more about one more way that you could use points and miles and share our story. Our family is a Peruvian-American family. My husband was born and raised in Peru, and we now live in Wisconsin for the last 14 years. And I kind of rediscovered my love of travel after the pandemic and have dove headfirst into points and miles. Deep in.
I feel like the pandemic was such a catalyst for a lot of people getting into this. Like everybody kind of just lost their mind and needed something to focus on, something to take their mind off of everything. And you guys had a crazy business. I mean, crazy, amazing, but also as a person who once had an in-home daycare that literally only lasted a year because I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going back to being a nanny. You guys had a preschool out of your home, which is so cool. And we want to hear all of this. But what I'm thinking is we rewind all the way back to 2003 and kind of start at the beginning because you and your husband have a meet cute story and everyone is going to want to hear the beginning of this beautiful relationship. So take us all the way back to 2003 and tell us where it all started. We want the story.
Sounds good. When I was a kid, our family had multiple foster children who came from Nicaragua to stay with us for medical care, and then they returned home. And that was kind of the beginning of my curiosity for other cultures and other places and other languages. And I started learning Spanish when I was young. But when I finished high school, I wanted to immerse myself in the Spanish language and work with kids. And so I moved to Peru when I was 18 for 9 months and was working in an orphanage as a volunteer at the time. And my husband was working as a social worker at the orphanage. So we met then, began a long distance relationship. I returned home to the States to finish my degree in education. And then I moved to Peru when I graduated to teach at a school. And we started our family there before we moved back to the States.
That is
so cute.
Since my kids were little, we were looking for like a bilingual early childhood experience. And that's when we started our preschool. I started it alone. And then during the pandemic, my husband had been working in the public schools here as a special ed assistant. And during the pandemic, we decided to work together because my assistant could no longer work with me. And it was a little bit of a delicate bubble situation, as you can imagine. And so last year we celebrated 10 years of our preschool, and I decided to follow my dream of traveling for a year with my family. I think I always imagined that being something I would do before I had kids, but I always like to say my oldest kind of budged in line. And so for many years, we just saved up, and every 2 years, travel back to Peru to see family, but that was like our only travel experiences because as teachers, like we just didn't have a whole lot extra to budget for travel. When I finally learned how, I had seen friends of ours, teacher friends of ours, take these like month-long trips in the summers with points and miles. And I like sort of talked to the husband about like how he did it, but I never felt like I had kind of the brain space for it. And so once my kids were out of early childhood and were like into their own things, and after the pandemic, I recognized like I was ready to like take on some new learning. And that's where I spent a lot of my time, was learning about how to open cards strategically and really dive into that. So my first goal was always to try to fly us to Peru for free or discounted, because that was always like the biggest expense when we went to go visit family. But I soon realized that really it had opened doors to so many more opportunities.
Yeah.
And we did finally make it to Peru on points and miles, but it is actually a lot trickier than I imagined.
You guys somehow managed to do a 6-month piece together of all these different places, which is so incredible. Before we dig into it, can you give us the makeup of your family, like ages and everything of your kids, just so we can picture who your travelers are?
Yeah, so I have 3 kids. My oldest is going to be 16 this weekend. My middle child it just turned 14. She was our last holdout. And my youngest is 10. And I have 2 boys and a girl. And they're all deep in their teen lives with friends and activities and all these things. And it took about 18 months to get everyone on board with this wild plan of moms.
Interesting. So the kids were not immediately on board when you were like, hey, let's drop everything and go travel for 6 months.
No, absolutely not. Nor was my husband. I would say my oldest son, he's up for an adventure. He was on board right away. He was like, all right, let's do it. My youngest was also has a very positive attitude about everything and was like, sure, let's go, Mom. And my husband was more skeptical about how we were going to make it happen, which I know we'll go further into. He never really dreamed of travel. That's always been my dream. And so I had to kind of come to terms with like doing something for Mom and the family while we, prioritize the kids for a long time and we prioritize our family as a whole. But it was kind of also coming to terms myself with like pushing my family to do something for me, which I think I knew in my heart, because I had done it before, that it would be positive for everyone and it would be an incredible experience that would bring us closer and that would be positive for everyone's life. But I had to kind of talk to everyone about why I thought this was good for us and why I wasn't trying to destroy my middle schooler's life by taking her away from her friends.
I have a 14-year-old girl, and there is no way. If I ever was like, we're just going to pick up and leave for 6 months, she would just die right then and there because the drama is real. So yeah. I'm so impressed. In fact, I feel like at the end, we should come back and touch on what everybody's thoughts were after you came back. Like, I would love to know the transformation, what they thought about it. Did this take place during the school year, or did you try to line some of it up with summer? And how did that work with school? Were you homeschooling or were they in school?
Yeah, so I was hoping for the whole school year because our preschool runs on a school year schedule. And so we could just kind of close for a year and then come back and we're going to open again in September. So that's the plan for us to continue. And with our kids in Wisconsin, it's pretty easy to homeschool and the requirements for that are pretty straightforward. And so we just withdrew them from school in the summer. We started in August and my whole family negotiated down to 1 semester because they wanted to do, 8th grade graduation and 5th grade graduation, that kind of thing. And so we decided we would go from the beginning of August till the middle of January, and then they would be back for the 2nd semester. So that's how we did it. We just withdrew them for 1 semester, and then they're in public school, so we registered them again when we came home.
Wow. Cool.
And we really focused on, world experiences. They did have some assignments, essays to write, and they worked on math online and did some research and things like that. But we were really focused on kind of experiential learning and learning languages and, learning about other cultures while we were on our trip.
So
incredible.
How in the world, because you needed a lot of points to make this happen. Okay, we're going to get into it later. You had to book 45 different flight tickets for your family, at least 33 hotel nights, crazy stuff. How did you go from opening your very first points card at the end of 2021 to having enough points for this, lay out for us. I know there were kind of three main strategies that it took to build enough points and also travel income so that you could make this possible. So if someone else is hearing this and they're like, okay, a normal family from Wisconsin, who own their own preschool. Like you guys, you weren't people who just had extra income to just go and do as they please. I say that because that's what we all are. And I think most of us listening, we don't just have a bunch of disposable income where we can go do this. So what were those three strategies that you focused on to make this happen for your family?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely took some planning, and we had been, or I should say, I had been kind of planning for this actively for about 2 years. I kind of set this goal in 2023 when we got back from our first big trip to Europe on points. And my daughter said to me, like, we could do that, Mom. I love travel. We could be like the bucket list family and travel around the world. And I was like, oh, we could never do that. And then I started to like go down a rabbit hole on how to actually make that happen. So my three strategies, I think, were like, first of all, just getting clear on like what we actually spent our money on. And so like looking at that specifically and seeing like how much money we actually spent every month, what that looked like. Because while we know that we're a family that's like lives under our means and we have money to put aside for travel, which is something we prioritize always to see our family in Peru, we also prioritize savings and investment money. And so I think that that was something that we had sort of set ourselves up for prior, because since we were self-employed, we don't really have anyone who's planning for our retirement or anything like that. And so probably one of the big strategies that we're leveraging, even being home and still not working, is our investment income. We've been investing for over 10 years, both in our retirement, but also in personal investments. And that's something that we knew that we would be a cushion for us if we needed it. We also I had planned for these points to take us around the world, right? I knew that I had, over 1 million points and that those were going to be enough to fly us most of the time that we needed to fly, which is another huge chunk of the cost. And then we rented out our home. And since we have our preschool in like a lower level, there's a kitchen, there's a bathroom, there's an extra entrance. So we rented our home actually in 2 units. So we had a basement unit and then our 3-bedroom house unit. And so I knew roughly how much income we would have from that and made sure that that would cover kind of our accommodation. So it was like the rental income was going to cover our accommodations, our, points and miles were going to cover most of the transport. And then what I figured was our investment income that we had made over the years. Granted, this is something like, this is a choice I'm making to spend those savings on this experience for our family, right? But that's something that we feel like is a priority to invest in the now. And then like there will be time to, accrue more in the future with our savings again. Obviously, we didn't take out of our, retirement accounts, but so we figured like, okay, all that we need, we roughly know how much it'll cost to eat, and like what we'll do for excursions will be covered by our, income. And we also are a family who we just don't like go to Target and spend $200 every week. We don't go get drinks every day. Like we just don't have a ton of daily income other than, of course, our business and like food, which is the biggest thing for our family, I think.
Yes.
But those were like the main ways that we, planned for. And actually, this was how I proved to my husband that it was going to be possible, because his biggest thing at the beginning was like, we could never afford that. And so I was like, well, let's look at the numbers. And so for a whole year, I tracked our income and tracked our spending and showed him with the numbers that it was going to be possible.
Very impressive. I'm imagining you with a PowerPoint and a clicker. Like, here's what we did. Here's our pie chart. Here's the things. I can make this happen.
Yeah, I'm not quite that organized, nor would he sit down for a PowerPoint presentation, but I did like have a spreadsheet and like, all these things being like, okay, so this is what we actually spend. This is what we wouldn't be spending if we weren't, here and spending on our business and things like that. There are some expenses that we could cut out by traveling and in fact spend less on, for example, food than we normally do when we're home, and spend less on different things because of the places in the world we decided to go.
This is amazing. So let's talk about credit cards specifically. Which ones did you open over the course of that 2 years to earn enough points for this trip? How can people pull this off?
Yeah, a million points. I know that's intimidating to people.
It's so good.
But it's doable.
It's doable.
It's doable. Then to 2023, when I kind of made this goal, I was like, all right, well, I have to think about what cards I'm opening that are going to get me sign-up bonuses that will work toward this goal. And so for me, I work with 3 different banks. I'm in Chase Bank, I'm in Capital One, and I'm in American Express. And so those were my focuses. I was like, I just need to build up my kind of points bank in those places. And so I have, one of the strategies I use was we have 3 businesses in our family. And so I can open business cards pretty easily for those businesses. We have our preschool, we have our rental properties, and I host women's trips around the world. And so I have this travel business that I also can open cards for, and I have in the past. And so Chase Ink cards have been a huge part of my strategy. Opening those 90,000 point bonuses with the 0 annual fee has just been a game changer. In 2024, we opened 2 Chase Ink cards between us. In 2025, we both went for the Companion Pass strategy with Southwest, which didn't help a ton with our around the world trip, but we opened those because we had a couple other trips that were going to benefit previous to and now afterwards as well. I opened an American Express Platinum card because we had previously the year before opened American Express Gold cards. And so I had kind of my husband's gold bonus that was still sitting there. I opened American Express Platinum for that bonus to kind of work together that way. And then in 2025, I opened 2 more Chase Ink cards. So I would say there's 4 Chase Ink cards and then an American Express. Those were the main ones. And
I have a sidebar question about the inks, just because things have changed so much. Have you had luck being approved for these just using different EIN numbers? Is one sole proprietor and then one EIN? Just for our listeners who are not new, who are already in it, and who are like, Chase points are so hard to earn, rules are so rapidly changing. I feel like anecdotally, I keep hearing that people are still having luck as long as they're using a different business. And has that been your experience as well?
Yes, I have a different EIN for each of my businesses. So those were the ones that I have opened, each with a different EIN. And so, for example, I established my travel business last year. I opened one Chase Ink card and then 3 months later opened another Chase Ink card. So that was kind of how I worked with that. My husband as well, we established the rental business because we were going to be traveling around the world. So he opened one Chase Ink card. I think what happened was I referred him, he opened one, he referred me, I opened one, and the back and forth. So we also benefited from those referral points. But yes, we've used in the past when I first opened my Ink card, I did open it with my Social Security number, but I always do with my EIN just to keep those businesses separate. But one of the big strategies that I use every year to open a card is we have pretty high property taxes on our home. And since we always get an escrow check every year from the bank, we just siphon that escrow check through our, we put it into our bank account, then we pay it through the credit card and pay it right off immediately.
Amazing.
And that's always a big sign-up bonus at the beginning of the year. And so my husband and I leverage that every year, even though there's a $120 fee. For me, it's worth it to get 90,000 points or 100,000 points.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
Very worth it.
So that's something we always keep in mind at the beginning of the year and definitely leverage that 2 years in a row. And as we were getting ready to go, we had a lot of projects. And so we had a lot of things we needed to pay for. And those we use mainly our day-to-day purchases to reach those sign-up bonuses. So we weren't spending outside of what we already expected to spend. Something I also did to kind of boost my points with Chase while I was getting ready for this trip is I used my Inc. business cash card to buy Airbnb gift cards at office supply stores. So I got the 5X on that, and then I put it right in my Airbnb account, and I could use it as we needed it throughout our trip. So that was one way I really tried to leverage the Airbnb.
Yes.
Because, yeah. And also
That's a great idea. And I actually need to get on that myself because we are staying at an Airbnb this summer. I have been using Fetch to earn some points. I have gotten about $200 worth of our Airbnb through Fetch gift cards, which is great, but it costs more than that. So for the rest of the Airbnb expense, I probably should look at the Chase Inc. situation, and at least that's some way to be earning. If you are paying cash for something, you're earning a really fantastic multiplier on it.
Exactly. Yep. And actually, one other little trick I use for Airbnb, if you ever fly with Avios, you can go in through British Airways or through the Iberia website, go through Avios, and it says like earn Avios with Airbnb. And if you just click through their website, then you're also earning Avios when you book your Airbnb.
Amazing.
So it's like a double dip there as well.
Love a double dip.
It's a steady increase. But I would say also that our Capital One Venture X card is our everything card. And so that's the card that both my husband and I use for all the purchases, on a regular basis. And we used it a lot when we were booking travel. And that's how we kind of accrued those Capital One points. We haven't gotten any more sign-up bonuses from Capital One since we opened our cards, but we find that if we use that on kind of our everyday purchases, it really adds up pretty quick.
Did you use those Capital One miles for rental cars on your trip to cover, just random expenses, or did you use them as transferable points to book flights?
We use them as transferable points to book flights, or we use them in the travel portal to book the flight directly. Now, I also had our each of my husband and my $300 each travel credit that we use for flights as well, which of course is kind of like a prepaid, part of the card, but it definitely was something we were counting on to use for our travel. One thing I did wrong is I didn't take my American Express Platinum card with me, and so I didn't get my $200 airline credit And at some point I called my mom, was like, you have to give me the information because I have to use at least the hotel credit. I forgot my card. And so she did end up giving me the information so I could use it to book a hotel at some point. But I kind of kicked myself for that, not using my airline.
It's important to share the mistakes because this will save somebody else. Okay, guys, we're pausing the episode because, Joe, I have got to tell you a story.
I love stories.
I know. This one made me really happy. So I have a loved one who's been going through a lot of medical challenges right now. Tons of medical problems, and my love language is typically giving people food. I want to send them Starbucks gift cards or some kind of food, right?
I deeply resonate with this.
However, due to the medical challenges that my loved one has been going through, they can't eat food right now. And so I was like, what can I do to send a hug to this person? I don't live near them. I want to be able to send a literal hug to them. And that's when I remembered Comfort. Comfort Clothing, which we already adore, they make the best blankets that are so soft, they're slightly weighted. So I decided to send her a Comfort Dreamer blanket, and then she sent me a picture and said, I literally feel a hug from you right now.
Okay, honestly, you have just inspired me because I actually have a family member going through some very difficult medical challenges. Literally right now, we were messaging about it yesterday, and I was going to send some kind of a care package from Amazon or something. You shifted my whole perspective. I'm about to send some comfort her way.
Yep, I also included the Cloud Loungewear. So they have pajamas, and their Cloud Lounge clothing is super soft and cozy. It's very cool, so it's lightweight and perfect as we head into spring and summer months. So I sent that in the blanket. I was so glad eventually the idea came to me, just because I normally send, food or whatever, and in some stages of life, some, different reasons, you need another option. And so Comfort was the perfect gift.
It literally is. I think a bunch of people are going to be inspired by this. And if you have a family member or a loved one or a friend that you want to bless with a little extra something today, Comfort's a great place to start. We have a link in our show notes that gets you 15% off of the entire site. We do earn a very small commission on this, and it's an amazing way to support the podcast. And we really appreciate you guys using our links and also sharing with us that you purchased these things and what you got them for and how much you love them. It is so fun for us to hear that.
It really is. So let us know. Be in our DMs. We love to hear from you. And we'll get back to today's episode. I'm guilty of that too, right? Because we have a bunch of credit cards, and generally most of them stay in a bucket in our house, a little basket that we don't always remember to take them when we travel. And it's like sometimes you need to take the physical card, whether you're trying to get into a airport lounge or you're at a hotel. It's just helpful to have the physical card, I feel like, when you're traveling, but sometimes I forget. I do the same thing. So this is a good reminder to anybody. If you're spring break traveling, summer traveling, take those cards
Don't
with
forget the
you.
cards.
Yes.
One other card that I will mention that I had forgotten about was we got the World of Hyatt Chase card a couple years ago, because I use that and I'll get extras when I have a big spend. I'll put $5,000 on that card and get another free night certificate with that. And so we did end up earning quite a few free night certificates with that card just by signing up and by hitting the year marker and spend and things like that. And so that was definitely so that was one of the cards I took. I took my Hyatt card, I took my Chase Sapphire Preferred and my Venture X. Those were like our travel cards that we were going to not lose. But I forgot my Platinum card.
Oh, sad.
This is all beyond mind-blowing when I think about putting together a puzzle this big, 6 months of travel with a family of 5. You booked a total of 45 flight tickets for your family, mainly long-haul flights, 30 hotel nights, in addition to all the Airbnbs that you booked also with cash. The total value, guys, I don't think y'all are ready for this. The total value of the points you used was almost $38,000 on this trip. You averaged 2.45 cents per point for the cents per point people out there, which is impressive on such a big scale like this for a family of 5. So, was this a massive color-coded spreadsheet? How in the world did you stay organized to plan all this? Did you plan it as you go? Like, did you have only a couple months planned and then you kept planning it as the trip was actually happening? Or was it all planned out ahead of time?
Yeah, this was a huge puzzle, and I am not the most organized person. So I've definitely used a spreadsheet in the past and I've used it since to kind of, write down the points we used and kind of sum it all up at the end. It really blew my mind too, to realize all of those numbers at the end. I was excited to put it all together to figure it out, because it does feel very satisfying to see all those numbers at the end and recognize how much we saved. I would say that the biggest puzzle for me when we were planning on being in Asia is kind of like where the rainy season is when. And so I started on a map. I did a lot of mapping out where we were going to go according to the seasons and when we were going to be there. We chased summer for about 6 months, so that was delightful. And I mostly planned it as I went. However, I did kind of take it one step at a time. So I would say, all right, our first stop is going to be Japan. Let's look at Japan as a 1 month. And so I would say I would look at the different points possibilities to get there. I would look up at where we wanted to go around the country and what that transportation would look like. And then I looked at kind of the cities we were going to stop in, how we wanted to stay there. Was there a good points option? Did we want to use points for that? Or did we want to stay in a place that had a little bit more space, for our family to be able to cook and that kind of thing? And it really depended on how long we were staying in an area and what we wanted our proximity to certain places to be. So I can use Japan as an example. We stayed for a month in Japan and we moved around the country. And so when we were going to Disney, we wanted to be really close to the parks. And so we used our points to stay at a hotel that had a shuttle to the parks. But the rest of the time, we wanted space to be able to cook breakfast for ourselves. And so everywhere else we stayed was an apartment type. And also your points can be burned really fast as a family of 5 because we need 2 bedrooms everywhere we go. And so we really focused on those category 4 and under Hyatt properties that we could transfer from Chase to book, and we could also use our free night certificates to stay. And so I think when we were in Japan, I only spent the points on 3 rooms, and then 3 of the rooms were free nights or something like that. I really tried to leverage at the same time those kind of bonuses we had with the Hyatt loyalty program.
Yeah. You thought about everything.
Yeah.
And then starting with the weather is so smart. I think I would have missed that. I can see myself showing up on a 6-month trip and it rains everywhere we go.
Well, we did have to skip Vietnam for that exact reason because in part because we didn't have our visas in time, but also in part because there was like terrible flooding and typhoons where we were going to be that we were like, maybe we don't want to go there anyways at this moment. We do want to go to Vietnam, but it didn't work to go at the moment.
Visas are another thing I didn't think of.
Yeah. So we ended up kind of taking it a month at a time on our trip. We had a general sense of where we were going to be. We had a couple different things booked beforehand, that like experiences booked that we didn't want to fill up without us. And so those were kind of our anchor points. And around that, we had a lot of flexibility. So we did book mostly accommodations that were, refundable up until some accommodations we booked, the day before or, and others. I tried to book the flights, at least a few weeks out. But that came back to kick us once too, when we had to switch from Vietnam. So at the end of the day, I think you can book way ahead, just like you can book the day before. And there's, pros and cons to both. And we kind of did a combination of all those things. I have a electronic notebook, which is like my lifeline. This is where I have all my notes and all my things. And so I have like, a page for each of the places. And so when I would research it, I write it all down in there. And that for me is easier to refer to and mess around with than a spreadsheet is. And so that's kind of my process. But again, I'm very type B, and it's hard
that's
for
a whole
me.
nother element to this. Because when I first heard about this trip, I assumed you were highly organized, which I love that you're not, because I am not. My husband is the highly organized one. I love that there's an element of spontaneity here. And you could be like,
favorite.
Nope, instead of going to Indonesia, we're going to go to Thailand now. That's really fun. And speaking of that, give us kind of a broad overview so that the audience and everybody knows where you actually went. So just give us a rundown of where you started and then each of the countries that you hopped around to throughout the trip.
Yeah. So we first flew from Wisconsin to Japan, and we spent time in a number of different cities in Japan, kind of going from big city to small city. We stayed for a month in Japan. Then we flew to Bali, and we stayed for 3 months in Bali, including a 3-day boat ride through Komodo National Park, which is a huge highlight for us. And we did lots of art in Bali, which is wonderful, and surfing. Then we flew to Singapore, and we had kind of like a 3-day stop in Singapore. My youngest, that was his biggest request was the Singapore airport for our whole trip. So that was a one stop for us for sure.
I love that it's the airport he wanted to go to. That is the style. That sounds like something my son would say.
does not disappoint. I'll tell you that. It was incredible. And then from Singapore, we went to Thailand. We went to southern Thailand and spent 3 weeks in southern Thailand. And we went on a tour of Khalsak National Park in the jungle. And then we spent 2 weeks with a group of world schooling families at this beautiful location in the Krabi area. And that was really fun that was a touch point for us to be able to be with other families and the kids to have other teens to hang out with. Definitely a highlight. From there, we went to Cambodia for 3 weeks. We extended that stay because we were originally supposed to go to Vietnam as well, but it actually worked out and we were really happy to stay in Cambodia for 3 weeks. It ended up being one of a big highlight for us. Then we went back to Thailand, northern Thailand for 3 weeks to the Chiang Mai area, and we met up with other World School families there and participated in some really incredible festivals in northern Thailand. From there, we flew on a 5-day layover to see some friends in Spain because we were making our way around the world. And so we stopped in Madrid for about 5 days, and then we flew to South America. And we were originally going from Spain to Brazil, but we didn't have our visa quite in time, so we ended up pivoting and going to Chile for 5 days. So we went to Santiago de Chile for about 5 days, and then we went to Brazil for 3 weeks, staying sometime in Rio, and then we stayed on the beach for a couple weeks, just our family. And then from there, we stopped by Iguazu Falls and Buenos Aires briefly, on our way to Peru to spend 3 weeks with our family in Peru for the holidays and New Year's. And then we rounded out our trip with a stop in Puerto Rico to meet up with my brother and my niece and nephews to finish off there before we came home to winter in Wisconsin.
To winter in Wisconsin. That might have been a little bit of a harsh awakening. Oh, man.
Are y'all the coolest people on the planet? Is that what
I
this
know,
is?
that's what I was
I
thinking.
think so.
Well, maybe we'll have to travel together someday and meet in real life. Figure it
That
out.
would be so fun. Also, do you have like a YouTube channel documenting this? Because I would watch every minute of this story. Like, I want to just see it unfold. You guys are the bucket list family.
Well, it was a bucket list adventure, that's for sure.
Guys, we'll get back to the episode in a second, but we wanted to remind you that this episode is presented to you by Yahoo Travel. We are writing the Why Wonder newsletter in partnership with Yahoo, and this is a fantastic newsletter. It comes to your inbox 2 times a week, and it will really help families travel more for less, just like we teach you on the podcast. It covers earning and maximizing points and miles and has practical advice and inspiration, not just dream destinations. So it really is just an extension of what we are doing here on the podcast.
Yeah, our goal is to keep you up to date on what's happening in travel, any latest developments from Yahoo Travel that our listeners would love. So head on over to travel.yahoo.com. Make sure you sign up. Make sure you put your little star or favorite, the first issue that you get, so that your inbox knows, hey, we want to get this in our inbox, not in the spam or promotions folder. So make sure you set that so that we will be in your inbox twice a week. We are so excited and we're so thankful for everyone who's signed up so far.
Yes, we are. And now let's get back to this episode.
I share on Instagram at Woodfords_worldwide, and I haven't even shared the whole trip yet. It's just so much to take in and so much to share about that I'm sure I'll be sharing about it for many months to come. So
When did you just get back in January?
We got back in mid-January this year.
Oh my
yes.
gosh, that's crazy. So this is all so fresh. Was
So
there a
fresh.
moment in all of this where you guys were like, pinch me? Like, this is not real. How did we do this? And was there also a turning point for your kids? Did you have any reluctant kids when you started who, like, once you were in it, were like, okay, I'm digging this? Or was everybody just really on board by the time you left?
I think the biggest moment for us where we were like, oh my God, this is happening, was when we were like getting on the plane and we were like, all right, well, everything's tucked away and we're actually doing this, and
Goodbye,
kind of the
cheese
leading
curds.
up to it. Yeah. And we were kind of, the leading up to it was kind of, it was a stressful moment because there was so much to do. So I think when we were finally leaving, it was like, oh my gosh. But I think it was a pinch me moment the whole time. Like, I think for me, it was like every moment was this like more and more developing of kind of this dream coming true. And I feel like we were all really grateful to have the experience. My kids miss their friends. I think we all went through moments just like anyone that we like missed home, or we missed our friends, or we missed our family, because we have family and grandparents really close. And so we're used to having those people in our daily lives, And so I think there were definitely moments when we all were homesick, but I think at the exact same time, everyone recognized how special the experience was and really got the best out of it, and just really were positive about it all. Even my daughter, the days leading up to it was like, I'm getting really excited. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Good. That's
Excited
awesome.
to hear that from her. So yeah.
Being that you guys run a bilingual preschool, I'm assuming your kids are also bilingual, English and Spanish. What was it like? You spent a lot of time in various Asian, countries and culture with unfamiliar language, not so much English or Spanish. How did that go? Did you guys put an emphasis on learning new languages there? Did you find, because you guys have brains that are used to, speaking multiple languages, was it pretty easy for you to pick up? Were any of your kids particularly into picking up a new language?
Yeah, so we do raise our children bilingual. So we speak both Spanish and English at home. And we all were excited about learning languages for this trip. My two sons worked on Portuguese for most of the trip. My husband and
Wow.
I studied Japanese for a number of months before we left. So we knew a little bit how to say things in Japanese. And then we also studied Portuguese a little bit. I would say, though, that our saving grace was like the Google Translation app, because
Yes.
we had mostly ever traveled just in Latin America and Europe a little bit, but we also have studied a little bit of Italian. And that's much closer to Spanish. And so being in Asia, where the words don't look even like Western writing, we did use like the camera feature of our app a lot. And we relied on that even to like find out what the buttons mean on the, dishwasher.
That's a
or on
lifesaver.
the,
It's a game changer. If you guys aren't familiar with it, there are, depending on what kind of phone you have or what apps you can download, where you can take a picture of something and have it translated to you. You don't even have to take a picture. Sometimes you can just hold your camera on it and it will translate it for you. I also love the strategy of being like, all right, we got 5 people. You're going to learn Japanese. You learn Korean. You learn, let's just divvy up a bunch of languages, and you're responsible. When we go to that country, you're leading the way.
I love that. Yeah, I think that we like would test each other's language a little bit when we were in Thailand, because we were there longer and we had a lesson on Thai when we were there. It was fun to kind of learn more phrases in Thai, but my kids are at a place where they're like mostly embarrassed by how I pronounce things. So like I'm enthusiastic about connecting with people through language, but they would rather me not practice different languages.
That is so funny, because when I was in Mexico just with my daughter recently, I was doing this. I'm always trying to brush up on my Spanish. I'm always trying to pronounce things correctly and not with an American accent. She's like, Mom, you do not need to say it like that. Just say adios. You do not have to put it. And I'm like, I am trying to say it correctly. And she's like,
Yeah.
It's so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing.
But I'm sure the people who you're speaking to appreciate the effort, and that's what I know. And so I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, I'm with
Know
you
that
there.
one, Nick.
Okay, I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about your business class flights to Peru, which is so cool. So you flew the whole family to Walker's home in Peru, and it was in business class. And you got paid $2,400 to do this. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
This was like the ultimate redemption, because my goal starting with Points and Miles was always to fly our family to Peru. And of course, like in the Points and Miles world, you're like, I would love a business class flight. But like as a family of 5, it's not something that I aspire to very often, because it just takes a lot of points, right?
Yeah.
And so I had a little bit of help figuring out how to redeem my points to get to Peru. But what I ended up doing was I transferred points from Chase to United, and it was 42,000 points plus $25 to fly from Chicago to Lima on points. And so that for me, I was like, that's great. I can open 2 cards, we can get those points. And so I booked it. And I was so excited to be able to tell people, like, I'm flying my family to Peru for $100 and that is all it's going to take, and points, right? And so then, and I was telling my kids, this is not something we're going to do often, but it's going to be an experience. You can have your Sunday on the plane. I was getting all excited because I made sure they were lay flat seats and everything. Well, our flight was supposed to take off at about 3 p.m. And so we were enjoying the business class lounge. And then our flight got delayed, and then it got delayed again. And we kept going back to the lounge. We were like, oh, well, like, we'll just get dinner now. We'll just get some, So it was fine with us, but eventually it was like 14 hours delayed, and they ended up giving everyone a $500 travel credit.
Oh
and
my
so we
gosh.
got paid $2,400 and so with that travel credit, we flew home from Peru, and my husband and I took a trip to Costa Rica.
Amazing. I was going to joke and say, like, you had to pick up the phone and call Lisa. You guys all know Lisa, our genius friend over at chasingmemories.co, who is an absolute guru when it comes to knowing your rights when you travel. But you didn't even have to do anything. They just were like, here's your $500 per person.
Yeah, well, and it's a good thing because I didn't know Lisa yet at that point. So now I would call her immediately.
Yes. She's the first person. Go straight to her website if anything like this happens to you guys. Well, actually, I'll link it in the show notes. Just make it easy to find.
Yeah. And so that was pretty exciting. We mostly slept on the flight, but it's definitely one of my best redemptions yet that I can remember.
Yes. That's so good.
Okay, I know this may be impossible, what I'm about to ask you. But with the entire trip in mind, don't say everywhere. Give me maybe 2 or 3 locations that you as a family enjoyed exploring the most. Maybe for people out there who are like, all right, I don't think we can go on a 6-month around the world trip. But you guys have kind of sampled everything as a family. So tell us what were 2 or 3 super, super highlights, locations that you guys just absolutely loved.
All right. Well, that's something that everyone asks us. So it's something that we've thought a lot about since we've gotten home was what are our highlights? I would definitely say one of the big highlights for us was gathering with other World School families at a place near Krabi called Spirit Mountain in Thailand. Krabi, Thailand is it's the ocean meets the mountains meets the jungle, and that's like my heaven personally.
Yes.
We had some really incredible learning experiences with Spirit Mountain about sustainable tourism and the area that we were staying in, as well as, rock climbing and exploring the jungle and things like that. So that was one of our big highlights, was being in Thailand. I think overall, I would recommend that to any family, Southern Thailand as well as Northern Thailand. We also really enjoyed spending time in Cambodia. Our family had some connections prior to going to Cambodia, so it felt like between the folks that we knew before we were there, as well as the people we met when we were there, it was really an incredible experience of just getting to know people. My family members, they played soccer every day with locals at the local soccer stadium, and we did a lot of learning about the history while we were there, and it was a really impactful experience for all of us. So that's
a fun one, because I don't think we don't hear about Cambodia a lot. So that's a really fun highlight.
Yeah, so we stayed in Siem Reap, Cambodia, but I know people who have traveled around the country and had incredible experiences in other places as well. And then I would say, personally, the third stop that was really meaningful to me was when we visited Iguazu Falls in Argentina and Brazil. That's something that I was hoping to see, for 20 years now, and being able to share that with my family was really special, especially because we went looking for waterfalls, and what we found was just incredible wildlife everywhere, and just butterflies spending the day with us. And
oh my gosh,
that's
amazing.
And rainbows everywhere, and it
sounds
was
like a movie.
It was really incredible. And I was just the whole time just like in my feelings about how grateful I was to be there and be sharing it with the people I love the most.
That is incredible. Well, now you're back. And that probably has a little bit of a bittersweetness to it. But I feel like there is no way to go on a trip like this and come back the same people. I imagine that every person in your family is changed by this experience. I know your kids are going to take so much of this forward in their lives. I feel like it's probably going to shape them and the way that they look at the world. So how do you think this has changed your family, and how did it impact your kids with their development just as people and independence, and then as just really good global citizens of the world? And then wrap all that up by telling us what their thoughts were at the end of everything.
Okay, well, I think that one of my husband and my goals for our family was, especially because he and I grew up in two very different cultures and two very different family experiences. And I think what we always wanted for our children while they are growing up in the US is to have the experience knowing what it's like for people to live in other places. So for us to show them many different places around the world where people live in different ways, for them to recognize that, the way that we know or we live isn't necessarily better. It just might be different. And, it's rooted in many different things, may it be history or climate or customs. And just having that experience, I think, is going to be impactful to their lives, no matter if we recognize it now or if they recognize it later. My youngest said to me at one point, I really like staying in Airbnbs because we can see like what all different people's houses look like. And I was like, yes.
I love that.
Perhaps not everyone lives like an Airbnb in those countries, but it is true that there are many different ways to live in the world. And this is one way to see the way people live in different places. And I think that they've grown when it comes to, resiliency and flexibility and just open-mindedness. My kids try all the foods and they try all the different, cultural experiences, and art experiences were something that we really seeked out. And they are quick to connect with other people, be it children their age or adults that they talk to. And, we were welcomed into the home of our guide in Thailand, and just this to see the ways that our kids connected with his child and just so quickly made friends, even when they couldn't share the language, was something that we really value. And it was really beautiful to see that firsthand. And I think for me, one of the reasons I wanted to go on this trip with my family, recognizing that perhaps as empty nesters, we could go on a trip around the world. I think that living these formative experiences with my kids and with my family was one of the reasons why I really wanted to do it with them. And so that was something. When people ask me, like, was it everything you hoped for? I think absolutely yes, because I could live those experiences with them and see the ways that they learn and grow. And, my oldest is already like, I want to go back to Cambodia on a study abroad, or me and my friend are going to plan a trip to here. And I love to see that because that's, it just shows that he kind of sees the world as a place that he can, learn from and meet people and connect with others. And I think that that's really our goal in the end.
It really is so
Incredible.
interesting to think how travel is going to change our kids in the long run. Sometimes I do think about what my kids may, if they decide to go to college, are they going to, some people, if they've never left the town where they live, they want to stay very close for college. But is this going to make my kids, are they going to want to go far from, the world is more accessible seeming to them. Like, I just think about how it will impact their decisions. I don't know. It's cool to think about. What advice would you give? And this doesn't have to be inspirational. It can be very practical too. But what advice would you give a family, maybe there's a mom or dad listening to this and, thinking I'm sitting on a pile of points, or I'm learning the tools I need to get a pile of points, but maybe they're too nervous to book that flight and take their family somewhere around the world. What piece of advice would you give them?
Very early on, I heard the term earn and burn. Right? You got to just earn it and burn it, because the points are not, the points are not always going to be there. The opportunities are not always going to be there. I think about people who are always waiting. Oh, my kids aren't old enough yet, or let's just wait until this phase of life. I feel like it's going to pass, and then you may or may not have the opportunity later on. And so take advantage of the points you have now, and you can always get more in the future. And granted, you might not have the same amount of points in the future, but another thing I like to keep in mind is the fact that you don't have to cover your whole entire trip on points. I think something I love about your podcast is just showing us all the different ways you can use points, and that each family, has different experiences and different needs. And so it might be that you use your points to go to the soccer tournaments one town away on the weekend, so you don't have to have that extra expense. It might be that you're planning for a bucket list trip for your family. And it might be that you're using these points to make a different lifestyle possible. And so I think that the one thing is to not be afraid to use the points, because you can always get more points in the future. And but you also don't have to use all of your points at once necessarily, right? You can cover part of your trip and then make it last for 2 trips. Or, you can kind of decide whether, the points or the cash would be better at that moment in your life, right? So I think that that's what I would say.
I think that's great advice. And that's why we like to tell a lot of stories here, because we want you to see all the perspectives. For Mary Ellen and I think we're kind of aligned on like $0 out of pocket as often as possible, because that's what fits our budget. But that is not the way you have to do this. And we want you to hear from everybody. I think about poor Kelsey, who we just had on, who we both audibly gasped when she was telling us about her cash flights, because we're
For
so
the record, I
unused.
told Joanna to cut that out of the podcast.
No, I wanted to
tagged
leave
it and
in
was
because
like, I thought it was so funny.
I left it in because I thought it was funny, because we sometimes just kind of forget. We get in this mindset of like, well, we can't go. I mean, for me, that's how it is. I can't go if I have to pay cash for this. But you guys can use points however fits your dreams and your goals and your budget, and however you do it is the right way to do it. And we hope that that's the message that we get across here. It is what we are going for. Okay, so for you, Kate, what's up next? What's the next big goal? Where are points taking you guys in the next few years?
Well, our point stash is really low at the moment.
It has
I
been
imagine.
depleted.
Although I did just open, I had to pay my property taxes. And so I did just open a Sapphire Reserve card, which is it's a little hard for me with that annual fee, but I'm going to use all the perks and I'm going to get everything
Heck
out of
yes.
it. But this summer, my family and I are going on a safari in Tanzania.
Oh,
So my goal,
Fantastic.
so my goal this week, we are paying cash for the safari, but my goal this week is to get as many flights as possible with the points that I have. So we are going to do everything possible to maybe book at least 1 or 2 people on points, and then that will definitely cut down on our costs out of pocket. But yeah, this is definitely a bucket list trip that I kind of impulsively decided on last year.
That it's time.
But it's going to happen, and in part because my aunt and I were already going to be traveling to Africa. And so I was like, well, if we're going, like, I'd love to share it with my family too. So we're going to
Amazing.
make that effort and really push toward that goal and do as much of it on points as possible. Mainly the flights, I think, will be what we book on points. But I do have a companion pass sitting around this year. And so we might be going, my son and I might be going to Boston to check out some colleges. That might be something we do on points.
I know about
We
colleges in Boston. My husband studied up there, and I lived there for 3 years when my
Oh,
husband was in
cool.
grad school. So big fan of Boston. You can talk with me offline about it.
Yeah, I went to college there too. So it's very nostalgic for me as
Awesome.
well. Yeah.
So fun. College visits. Oh my gosh, they come so fast.
Yep.
Okay, Kate. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Remind everybody all the places that they can look you up online and see some of the visuals of this adventure, some video clips from your trip.
I share all our adventures at Woodfords_worldwide on Instagram. And if you ever want to travel with me, I also host women's trips at Adventure Babes with 2 underscores in between.
I'll tag both of those in the show notes so you guys can follow those super, super easily. Kate, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Feel free to come back and talk about any of your points trips anytime.
Awesome. See you later.
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. We hope you learned something new and feel inspired to plan your next trip.
Remember, we're travelers sharing our experiences, not financial advisors, so always do your own research and make informed decisions.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss a Points and Miles tip.
We'll see you next time on Wonderland on Points.